It's time for the Garden Crossings planting beds to be put to sleep for the fall. Hi, I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings, and in today's video, we're just going to take a walk around the property and see what our maintenance crew has been doing as far as tearing out annuals, trimming back perennials and shrubs, and we're going to take a look at some of the plants that we've trimmed back, how we've done it, also taking a look at some of the shrubs that we've left behind. So let's go ahead and take a walk through the gardens. The bed here along the driveway, if you remember, had the lantana that was planted along the front. And these are a whole bunch of hydrangeas. These are all hardy hydrangeas, part of the panicle family. We had the pufferfish in here, we had little lime punch, and then we had the little quickfire. So all of these hydrangeas were trimmed back by about half. And that's kind of the rule of thumb that I gave the landscaping crew is, if it's a shrub that blooms on new growth, I want you to go ahead and trim it in half. And you can see with the trimming that they've done, they've just kind of rounded them out, both on the top and on the side, to create a nice shape to these plants. So they're going to continue to lose all their leaves, and the next spring when they come back, they're going to have that nice shape to them because of how they were trimmed this fall. As we make our way around, the next bed we're going to look at, the picket fence, or I guess it's not a picket fence, but the split rail fence. This was just a mass of beautiful, beautiful annuals. So we had sun patience in here, there was salvia, and there was also some fennel or dill in here for the black swallowtails, and it was just a massive, massive show of color. All of those annuals were all pulled out, and now we just have our dirt and mulch that remains, and it's going to continue to just stay like this until next spring, when we'll come back in again and do another mass planting of annuals. So that's something you'll want to stay tuned for to see what we are going to be planting in this bed next season. Our proven winter signature garden bed, we left up the cornice, and actually I was going to have them trim these guys all back in half as well, but Rod and I decided that maybe we would just go ahead and leave them, because once all of the leaves fall off, this is a red twig dogwood, and it's going to have a lot of cool winter interest. So in the winter, when the snow flies, we're going to have these gorgeous red twigs that will stand out in the backdrop and give this area of the garden just a little bit of winter interest. The other thing is too, is I'm going to come in here and just trim out a few of these red twigs for my winter porch pots. So we didn't want to trim them back and then have the twigs be so short. So this will be a plant we will hit in the spring, and this one will also get trimmed in half, especially with these red twig or yellow twig dogwoods. If you just continue to let them grow and don't do any trimming on them, the twigs are going to get brown and just woody looking. So if you trim them every couple years or so, it's going to always keep the twigs fresh and really vibrant color. This is the yellow twig dogwood, the Arctic Fire Yellow. I don't love this particular one because I think the habit of it is really wonky. I feel like it's kind of sprawling and spreading and just doesn't have as nice of an upright mounting habit as the Arctic Fire Red does. That's my personal opinion. But as you know, I'm very honest with what I talk about in my gardens. And had I known the habit of this one was just so sprawling and spreading, look like I would not have ever really planted it. The other nice thing with the dogwood is you can see they do have pretty fantastic fall color as well with the burgundy and the yellow leaves. We ripped out all the annuals that were bordering this bed, and that's kind of about the first 3 to 4 foot of the bed. And then once we get past that point, we get into where the perennials were planted. So what we had the team do is basically come through and trim back all of the perennials down to the ground. So you can see they did a really good job of just trimming them. I think they used a hedge trimmer or something, just right there above the base. We also did that with our hardy hibiscus. So a lot of times people are going to recommend you trim the hardy hibiscus back in the spring. For us, we don't have time to deal with it in the spring, so everything gets trimmed back in the fall. And the hardy hibiscus, this is trimmed back to about 4 inches or so above the ground. Now there are a few poppies, and they didn't trim those back. They could have, but they didn't, and that's fine. I mean, that will not be a big deal. We've got our gem box ilex or holly, These we did not do any trimming on. This is an evergreen, so these will stay green all winter long, giving this bed a little bit of structure. This is a plant though, if we wanted to, we could come through and give it just a little bit of a trim to shape these plants, but we're gonna go ahead and just let them kind of continue to grow into their natural form and see what they do. Not to say that we won't ever come through and shape them up a little bit, but these, they took a little while to grow. It took about 5 years or so to get to this current size that they're at from a quart-sized container. And right now they are about 3 foot tall for reference. A few of the other shrubs that are in this bed, another hydrangea. This is a smooth hydrangea that was cut back in half. We did leave the butterfly bush up though. So this is a pugster butterfly bush, and we did not have them trim those back to the ground. That will be something that we will selectively trim in the spring. And the reason why is we're in a zone 6A here, and sometimes butterfly bush can have a little bit of a struggle coming back. So the more protection we can leave on the top of the plant, the better off and the more protected that plant will be. We have a proud berry here, and you can see that they did leave the berries on. Although this particular specimen doesn't have a ton of berries left, they did leave them here though, just for a little bit of winter interest. The bloomerang, this is bloomerang dark pink, losing its leaves. We don't want to trim any of the lilacs back. That's also that tall specimen in the back there. Lilacs bloom off of the previous season's growth, and if we were to trim them back right now, we would be sacrificing our spring blooms. Now the bloomerang series of lilacs are rebloomers, so even if we did go through and trim them, they would bloom at some point throughout the season, but that's not something I wanted to do because I don't want to risk the amazing blooms that happen around May here in Michigan. There's a bunch of daylilies in this area of the bed, some Nephofia, some lavender, and you can see they were all trimmed back. We had a bunch of the limelight hydrangeas and also some spirea. And it looks like the spirea, they just gave a little bit of a light trim to. This is a candy corn. Behind it is a firelight tidbit that was trimmed. Looks like they took about 1/3 off the firelight tidbit. And that's a new, blooms on new growth. So again, not sacrificing or worrying about any blooms that we may or may not get next spring, because it will bloom off of the new season's growth. Just memories of the summer and the color that this bed had. It's just so crazy to think, again, what just a couple months can do to the growing season. Now, it is definitely past time here for us to be getting these beds cleaned up in Michigan. We had a warm fall, and that was really nice because the plants just continued to hold on, and they did fantastic. So we definitely got our colors worth out of anything that was planted this year. But it also is very refreshing to see that these beds are cleaned up. There's just something so freeing about a nice cleaned up garden bed. We had penstemon in this area, some tall flax, all trimmed back. We've got the creeping flax. We don't do any trimming back on the creeping flax. That's just very low growing and kind of stays evergreen here in Michigan. Might turn a little yellow, but there still is a lot of green that kind of holds. Also here are some dianthus. These are the Paint the Town series of dianthus. We don't do anything with those either. We just kind of let them be, and they'll be gorgeous in May, blooming. There was a lot of Rudbeckia in this area, and especially now that it's trimmed back, I can see how it seeded itself, which is good. I'm good with that because this is a perfect area for a mass amount of the Rudbeckia to really put on some nice color. So just everything nice and tidied up and trimmed back for the season. We're gonna head on over yonder to some of the other beds that have a lot of shrubs in them, as well as perennials. As we make our way that way, you can also notice that our sign garden has been torn out. That was full of sun patiens and I think it's funny how you forget what was in there. Sun patiens and also sedum lemon coral. So that is all freshly ripped out, and that will be ready again for planting next season. We had at one time planted this whole area with tulip bulbs, and that was so pretty. We haven't done that in a few years, but something maybe we should consider again in the future. Definitely something I think I might talk to Rod about and seeing if he'd be willing to plant this bed up with tulips, because it really is a nice look in the spring when you know, nothing else has really woken up yet, but those tulip bulbs start to emerge. All right, so I'm not sure how far the team has gotten over here yet. Looks like the waterfall bed they have not touched. But we're gonna just take a quick walk around it because I wanna show you essentially what these beds are looking like before the team is coming through and ripping the stuff out. Before we make our way around though, I wanted to show you this gorgeous Itea. This is Itea Little Henry, and this is a really fantastic plant that has multi-seasons of interest. In the spring, it has gorgeous white bottle brush flowers, and in the fall, you can see how it puts on such a fantastic show of bright red color. Isn't that gorgeous? But man, these sun patients gave us so many weeks of enjoyment throughout the summer, and they are just, in my opinion, one of the most easiest plants to grow that rewards you with some of the most vibrant color in a garden. We've got some begonias still holding on a little bit there, which is surprising, but it's probably because they're under that tree and the tree's protecting them a little bit. But just the sad bones of a garden once frost hits. The 55-mile-an-hour garden is getting torn out right now, and wow, what a massive amount of foliage. This is all going over to our compost pile where it'll get composted. We have a friend of ours that it's an excavating business, and he'll take all this over to his land and just lets all this stuff break down, and then he'll reuse it and sell it when people need fresh, nice topsoil. So this was the Supertunia Vista Jazzberry we had planted in this area, along with the Macedonia Gold Dust. And this definitely was a very eye-catching, head-turning garden with that massive color. And I think it did so well. We'll probably go ahead and repeat those same colors again next year, just because they did so fantastic. Looks like a little bit has gotten ripped out of here. Some sunflowers, a few annuals and such are still remaining. This is a big job. I mean, it takes about a week to get this all planted, and literally it takes just about as long to get it all removed as well. You say, you know, what's easier, planting it or taking it out? Honestly, I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to that. Planting is probably more enjoyable than taking it out. I would have to say that's probably the case. Now, one thing we did do is we had the team come through and take some spray paint and put a little dot in the bed of the plants that we don't want trimmed. So these are all of our spring blooming shrubs. So if there's a little pink dot there, the team knows to skip over them and not trim them back. So some of those plants would be like the big leaf hydrangeas. They bloom off of old and new growth, so we don't want to touch them, especially this time of year. We've got Deutzia cherry blossom. That's a spring blooming shrub. We don't want that trimmed because, again, we wouldn't be able to enjoy flowers next spring. There's a forsythia back there. Forsythia is a very well-known spring blooming shrub with its vibrant yellow blooms. Don't want to trim that because then we won't have those flowers. So definitely when you're planting your garden, you do want to know what the plants are and when they need to be trimmed. So we try to include on our website for all of the shrubs specifically if it blooms on new or old growth, and also letting you know when it should or shouldn't be trimmed. Here's some more of that ilex. That's our evergreen in here, and that's just gorgeous how it has a sweeping motion. So once all these other plants are removed, we're going to have these gorgeous balls of evergreen that will remain. These are Shasta daisies. They're going to get trimmed right back to the ground. Nephophia, trimmed right back to the ground. Achillea, right down to the ground. All of that is going to get trimmed down to the ground to keep the garden clean. There's the Heptacodium, Temple of Bloom. If you have watched my videos a few weeks ago, we did do a video on trimming that and shaping that. So if you were somebody that was wondering how do you trim and shape a Heptacodium, Temple of Bloom, be sure to look back. I'll put that video in the description below as well. But by doing so, we exposed all of the stems with a beautiful peeling bark, which is really nice for winter and fall interest. So there's definitely a lot to do out here in the landscape yet, but they are definitely making good headway and getting this just beautifully cleaned up for fall. Oh, look at there, the roses. They're gonna get trimmed, they're wild. But look at that. Here we are, November, and they're still blooming. So that's why it's fun to walk out in the garden and just see what a special treat the garden rewards you with. Is that not amazing? Look at all of the blooms. This is November in Michigan. This is unheard of. So the roses are still kicking and doing really beautiful things in this late summer garden. A few other things I wanted to point out to you here on the end of what we call our north garden is the cone flowers. And if you have cone flowers, this is a plant you could leave because the seeds in those cones are nice for the birds. We're going to trim them back, but that is a plant definitely if you're looking for birding interest in the winter time. Coneflowers are a plant you could leave. Maybe your milkweed is starting to go to seed, and that too is something if you want to collect those seeds and plant them elsewhere, you could have a lot of milkweed in your garden. These are going to get trimmed back today, but I'm sure by looking at the seeds, how they're already kind of having their little cottony plume, I'm sure there's plenty of them that have made their way in the garden and will be seeding themselves. Who knows where? It's little special surprises that'll show up next spring. But that is something you can do too, is keep the seeds and replant them or trim them back if you don't want to have just seedlings everywhere. Allium Millennium, those we're going to get trimmed back to the base. We've got the gorgeous Little Lime Punch Hydrangeas out here on the end. They're going to trim the flowers off of those, probably trim them back by a third to get them all nicely cleaned up as well. And one last thing I wanted to show you is on some of these shrubs along the bed here, what they did is Rod came out here and kind of showed them what to do, but they did mark on these trees as well. This is a Rose of Sharon. And so where this tree is marked, that is the trim line. So they know that they're going to trim just below that spray paint line. Here's another hydrangea. This is a quick fire fab. You can see there where they have the line. So this is going to get trimmed back by about a third, maybe a half by the time it's all said and done. But that's just one way of showing the company, the landscape company that's doing the cleanup, what we want done, where we want it done, and just help give them some guidelines as to how to do it. Lots more to do, but I hope that just walking through the garden today, seeing what's been trimmed back and what yet has to be trimmed is helpful. And hopefully too, just giving you permission to, if you need to, because it makes your life easier, just go ahead and trim those perennials back now, because sometimes you have to do what is easier for you and what makes gardening most enjoyable. I know for me, if these were all still here in the spring, this would be super stressful for me and probably wouldn't make gardening near as enjoyable. So this is your permission to go ahead, get out in your garden, do some trimming, do some fall maintenance, and just feel happy about what you want to do in your garden when you want to do it. And one last spot I almost forgot to show you was our parking lot bed, which was the home of all of the new for 2026 Proven Winner annuals. And then we also have some shrubs in here for foundation and a few perennials as well. But all those annuals have been ripped out. We've done a lot of videos on the new for 2026 annuals and talked about the ones that we really loved, ones that maybe weren't our favorite, but that's a video if you want to reference. We'll put a link below as well to that. But the shrubs that remain, there was a Firelight Tidbit that got trimmed back in half. An Atlas Rose that just got nicely shaped up. Pugster Butterfly Bush, just a light trim. Like I said, with that one, we could take it down to the ground because in Michigan, usually they come back from the base. But we're gonna leave a little bit up top there just to give it a little bit of winter protection, and then we'll decide in the spring where the new growth is coming from if we need to do any additional trimming on that as well. All the aquapots have been pulled out. That was a video we also did here just a few days ago. So if you want to watch the removal and how we tidied up those aquapots for the winter, that's another video you can reference as well. But things are definitely shaping up and looking good. And I love this bed, especially this time of year, when you can still see some of the structure that's in here, some of those shrubs that we leave in, just to have just some anchors. You know, the garden needs anchors in it. It needs spots that just stay consistent year to year, in my opinion, And that's definitely what these shrubs do in this bed. And then we'll have those perennials that are in here as well. There's a lot of phlox and Shasta daisies, allium, just some of those good staple perennials too, that kind of cycle through when it's their time to shine in the garden. That way the garden doesn't always look the same. It's always changing, and especially is changing when those annuals really put on some really prolific growth mid to end of the summer. So that's a wrap on the 2025 growing season. I hope you have enjoyed the videos that we've done. We certainly will be continuing to do videos throughout the winter as well, just talking about top 10 lists, some of our favorites, and looking forward to the future and what that all has to offer. Thank you for walking through the gardens with us today. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. And if you're new to our channel, I welcome you to subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.